Hello, everybody. Welcome on board. I'm going to go ahead and give a minute for everybody to jump on in case anybody's coming in late, in case we have any special guests, anything like that. So far, it looks like it's just me. So, welcome to my class. This is going to be the last one for the month, and we'll go ahead and get started again. Tomorrow will be the first one of the next of May, and we are going to continue this until the end of the school year. And I don't know, we'll see. We'll sort of take it from there. So, Jerry, welcome back. Glad you could make it. I see somebody else is in here. Please feel free to say hi, jump in on the chat. Any questions, anything that you want to stop, or just if you want to say hi and see how everybody is, feel free. This is your class. So, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Today, we're basically just getting into the rising action. As of the last one, they had gone through and looked for the this narwhal that they suspected was terrorizing the seas, destroying all these ships. After quite a bit of time, quite a few months of chasing, they never actually found it. And so finally, the commander gave the order to go back to European waters and go dock. However, that's when everything changed. They finally found something. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 6 at full steam. At the shout, the whole crew rushed towards the harpooner. Commander, officers, mates, sailors, cabin boys, down to engineers leaving their machinery and stokers neglecting their furnaces. The order went forth, and the frigate simply coasted. By then, it was completely dark, and as good as the Canadian's eyes were, and I wondered how he could see what he'd seen. My heart was pounding fit to burst. But Ned Land hadn't been mistaken. All we had, and we all spotted the object he was pointing to. Astern to the starboard, less than a quarter-mile away from the Abraham Lincoln, the sea seemed to be lit from underneath. This was no simple phosphorescent phenomenon, which is unmistakable. Submerged several yards under the ocean of the water, the monster gave off the same intense, bewildering glow that several captains had mentioned in their report. This magnificent radiance had come from some force with a great illuminating capacity. The area of its luminescence swept over the sea, with an immense slender oval whose middle shape was concentrated, blazing core of light, an unbearable glow that gradually faded as it spread out from the center. It's only a cluster of phosphorescent particles, one of the officers exclaimed. No, sir, I countered with conviction. No marine creatures, not even salps or piddocks, have ever given off such a strong light. The glow is basically electrical in nature. Besides, look, it's shifting. It's moving back and forth. It's darting at us. A shout went up to the whole frigate. Quiet, Commander Farragut said. Helm hard to windward. Reverse engines. Sailors rushed the helm, engineers to the machinery. Under reverse steam, immediately the Abraham Lincoln beat to port, sweeping in a semicircle. Right your helm, engines forward, Commander Farragut called. These orders were executed, and the frigate quickly retreated from that blazing core of light. My mistake. It tried to retreat, but the uncanny creature came towards us at a speed twice our own. We gasped. More astonished than afraid, we stood hushed and motionless. The animal easily caught up with us. It circled the frigate, doing about 16 miles per hour, and erupted in sheets of electricity that looked like luminous dust. Then it retreated 2 or 3 miles, leaving phosphorescent trail like swirls of steam that shoot behind the locomotive of an express train. Suddenly, all the way from the dark horizon where it had gone to gather its momentum, the monster dashed abruptly towards the Abraham Lincoln in frightening speed. Stopped shortly 20 feet from our side plate, quenched its light, not by diving under the water since its glow didn't reduce gradually, but all at once, as if the source of that brilliant outpouring had suddenly been shut off. Then it reappeared on the other side of the ship, either by circling us or gliding under our hull. Any second a collision would have occurred, and it would have been fatal to us. Meanwhile, I was amazed at the frigate's maneuvers. It wasn't fighting, it was fleeing. The hunter had become the hunted, and I said as much to the Commander Farragut. His face, ordinarily so unemotional, was stamped with undescribable amazement. Professor Aronow, he replied to me, I don't know what sort of fearsome creature I'm up against, and I don't want my frigate running foolish risks in all that darkness. Besides, how can you go on offense or defense when you're facing the unknown? Let us wait for daylight, and then we'll swap roles. You have no further doubts, Commander, as to the nature of this animal? No, sir. It's apparently a gigantic narwhal. and an electric one to boot. Maybe, I added. It's no more approachable than an electric eel or an electric ray. Right, the commander replied. And if it has their electrocuting power, it definitely is the most dreadful animal ever conceived by our Creator. That's why I'll keep on my guard, sir. The whole crew stayed on their feet all night long. Nobody even thought of sleeping. Unable to match the monster's speed, the Abraham Lincoln slowed down and stayed at half steam. For its part, the narwhal emulated the frigate, simply rode the waves, and seemed determined not to leave the field of battle. But towards midnight, it vanished. Or to use a more appropriate expression, it went out like some huge glowworm. Had it left us? It was our duty to fear so rather than hope so. But then at 12:53 in the morning, we heard a loud hissing sound, like the noise made by a waterspout that expelled tremendous force. By then, Commander Farragut, Ned Land, and I were in the afterdeck, peering eagerly into the deep gloom. Ned Land, the commander said, have you often heard of whales bellowing? Often, sir, but never a whale that netted me $2,000 just for sighting it. That's right, the prize goes to you, but tell me, isn't that the sound cetaceans make when they spurt water out of their blowholes? The same sound, sir, but this one's way louder, so it's plain as day. There's definitely a whale lurking in these waters. With your permission, sir, the harpooner added, tomorrow at sunrise I'll have words with the critter. Assuming it's in the mood to listen to you, Mr. Land, I replied in a dubious tone. If I get within 4 harpoon lengths of it, the Canadian shot back, it had better listen. But to get near it, the commander went on, wouldn't I need to put on a whaleboat at your disposal? Certainly, sir. That would be gambling with the lives of my men. Mine too, the harpooner merely replied. At nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, the blazing core of light appeared, just as intense, 5 miles windward of the Abraham Lincoln. Despite the distance, despite the noise of the wind and sea, we could clearly hear some of the fearful thrashings of the animal's tail, even breath. When that enormous narwhal came up to breathe at the surface of the ocean, the air sucked into its lungs sounded like steam going into huge cylinders of a 2,000 horsepower engine. I said to myself, a cetacean as powerful as a whole cavalry regiment. Now that's a whale of a whale. We stayed alert until daylight, getting ready for action. Whaling gear sat lined around our railings. Our chief officer looked at the blunderbusses, which can shoot harpoons as far as a mile, and long duck guns with exploding bullets that can mortally wound even the strongest creature. Ned Land was content to sharpen his harpoon, a dreadful weapon in his hands. At 6 o'clock began the dawn to break, and with the first rays of sunshine, the narwhal's electric glow vanished. By 7 o'clock it was light enough, but a very heavy morning fog restricted the horizon, and our spyglasses couldn't see anything through it. The outcome? Disappointment and anger. I hoisted myself onto the crosstrees of the mizzen sail. A few officers were already perched by the mastheads. By 8 o'clock, the fog was rolling ponderously across the waves, and its huge curls were gradually lifting. The horizon grew wider and clearer all at once. Suddenly, just as on the previous evening, Ned Land's voice rang out. Sorry, I lost my point. There's the thing we're after, astern to the port, the harpooner shouted. Every eye looked towards the area indicated. There, a mile and a half from the frigate, a long blackish body emerged from the yard above the water. Quivering forcefully, its tail created a considerable eddy. No caudal equipment had ever thrashed the sea with such strength. A huge wake of glowing whiteness marked the animal's track, which swept in a long curve. The frigate drew nearer to the cetacean. I examined it with a completely open mind. The reports from the Shannon and the Helvetia had slightly exaggerated its dimensions, but I put its length at only 250 feet. Its girth was harder to judge, but on the whole the animal seemed wonderfully proportioned in all three dimensions. While I was studying this phenomenal creature, 2 jets of steam and water had sprang from its blowholes and rose to an altitude of 130 feet, which settled in its branch the vertebra, class Mammalia, subclass Monodelphia, group Pisciformis, order Cetacea family, and here I couldn't make up my mind. The order Cetacea consists of 3 families: baleen whales, sperm whales, dolphins, and it's in this last group that the narwhals are placed. Each of these families is divided into several genera, each genus into a species, and each species into varieties. So I was still missing variety, species, genus, and family, but I was sure I would complete my classifying with the aid of heaven and Commander Farragut. The crew were impatiently waiting for orders from their leader. The latter, after carefully studying the animal, called for his engineer. The engineer raced over. Sir, the commander said, are you up to pressure? Aye, sir, the engineer replied. Fine. Stoke your furnaces and clap them on to full steam. 3 cheers greeted this order. The hour of battle had sounded. A few moments later, the frigate's 2 tunnels spewed out a torrent of black smoke. The deck shook from the vibrations of its boiler. Driven forward by a powerful propeller, the Abraham Lincoln headed straight for the animal. Unconcerned, the latter let us get in within 100 yards. Then, not bothering to dive, it picked up a little speed, retreated, and was content to simply keep its distance. The chase dragged on for 3/4 of an hour without the frigates gaining 12 feet on the cetacean. At this rate, it was obvious we would never catch up with it. Infuriated, Commander Farragut kept twisting on the thick tuft of fur that flourished under his chin. Ned Land, he called. The Canadian reported for duty. Well, Mr. Land? The commander asked. Do you still advise me to break out the longboats? No, sir, Ned Land replied, because we aren't going to catch that beast against its will. Then what should we do? Stoke up more steam if you can. As for me, with your permission, I'll get situated by the bobstays under the bowsprit, and if we come within a harpoon's length, I'll harpoon the brute. Go for it, Ned, Commander Farragut replied. Engineer, he called, keep the pressure mounting. Ned Land made his way to his post. The stokers prodded the furnace with even more energetically. The propeller did 43 revolutions per minute, and the steam burst from its valve. Heaving the log, we saw the Abraham Lincoln going at the rate of 18.5 miles an hour. But that damned animal also did a speed of 18.5. The next hour, our frigate kept up this pace without gaining 2 yards. This would be mortifying for one of the fastest racers in the American Navy. The crew were seething with surly anger. Sailor after sailor threw insults at the monster, which couldn't be bothered with answering back. Commander Farragut wasn't simply content to twist his goatee, he chewed on it. He summoned the engineer at once. You're up to maximum pressure, the commander asked him. Aye, sir, the engineer replied. And your valves are charged to 6.5 atmospheres. Change them to 10 atmospheres. A typical American order if I'd ever heard one. We might as well have been in a Mississippi paddleboat race trying to outstrip the competition. Conseil, I said to my gallant servant, now at my side. You realize we're likely to blow ourselves sky high? As master wishes, Conseil replied. All right, I admit it. I did wish to run the risk. They charged the valves, the furnaces gobbled up more coal, fans sent steam of air over the braziers. The Abraham Lincoln picked up speed. The masts trembled down their blocks, and the swirls of smoke could barely squeeze through the narrow funnels. We heaved a log a second time. Well, helmsman? Commander Farragut asked. We're doing 19.3 per hour, sir. Keep stoking the furnaces. The engineers did so. Our pressure gauge read 10 atmospheres, but no doubt if the cetacean itself had stoked up, because without the least amount of trouble, it also did 19.3. What a chase! No, I can't describe the excitement that had made me tremble from head to toe. Ned Land stayed at his post, harpoon in hand. Several times the animal let us close in. We're overhauling it, the Canadian would shout. And then, just as he was about to strike, the cetacean would dash away so swiftly, I estimated it was going at least 30 miles an hour. Even at our maximum speed, it took liberty of thumbing its nose at the frigate and running a full circle around us. A howl of fury burst at everyone's lungs. By noon, we weren't any further along than 8 o'clock in the morning. Commander Farragut decided for a more direct approach. So, he said, the animal's faster than the Abraham Lincoln. All right, let's see if it can run our conical shells. Mates, man the forward gun. They immediately loaded and leveled the forecastle cannon. The cannoneer fired the shots, but the shell passed a few feet above the cetacean, which lay half a mile off. Over to somebody with a better aim, the commander shouted, and $500 to the man that can pierce the infernal beast. Steady of eye, cool of expression, the old gray-bearded gunner, I can see him to this day, went up to the cannon and put a piece in his position. Took aim for a good while. There was a loud explosion with mixed cheers from the crew. The shell reached its target. It hit the animal, but not in the usual manner. It bounced off that rounded surface and vanished into the ocean 2 miles out. Oh, drats, the old gunner said in his anger. The rascal must be covered with 6-inch plate armor. Curse the beast, Commander Farragut shouted. Once again, the hunt was on. Commander Farragut leaned over me, saying, I'll chase that animal till my frigate explodes. Right, I replied, and nobody will blame you. We still could hope that the animal would tire out and not be as immune to exhaustion as our steam engines. No such luck. Hour after hour went by without it showing the tiniest sign of weariness. But to the Abraham Lincoln's credit, I must say it struggled with an unflagging persistence. I estimate we covered 300 miles during that ill-fated day of November 6th, but night fell and wrapped the rolling ocean in shadows. But then I figured that our expedition had come to an end and would never see the fantastic creature again. I was mistaken. At 10:50 in the evening, that electric light reappeared 3 miles windward of the frigate, as clear and intense as the night before. The narwhal seemed perfectly still. Maybe it was asleep, weary from its workday, or just riding the waves. This was our chance, and Commander Farragut was determined to take full advantage of it. He gave his orders. Staying at half steam, the Abraham Lincoln moved forward cautiously so as not to awaken its opponent. In the mid-ocean, it isn't unusual to come across whales so sound asleep that they can be successfully attacked, and that land had harpooned more than one in its slumber. The Canadian went back to his post in the bobstays under the bowsprit. The frigate closed in without making a sound, stopped less than a quarter of a mile away from the animal, and coasted. Nobody breathed on board. Absolute silence reigned on the deck. We weren't 100 feet away from the blazing core of light whose glow intensified, dazzling the eyes. Just then, leaning over the forecastle rail, I saw Ned Land below me, one hand gripping the martingale, the other hand brandishing his dreadful harpoon. Barely 20 feet separated him from the motionless animal. All at once, his arm shot forward and the harpoon was in the air. I heard the weapon collide resonantly, as if it had hit some hard substance. The electric white light suddenly went out, and two enormous water sprouts crashed into the frigate's deck, racing like torrent from stem to stern, toppling crewmen, breaking spare masts and yards from their lashings. An appalling collision had occurred, and before I could catch a hold of anything, I was thrown over the rail and into the sea. That's it for chapter 6. Join me tomorrow for chapter 7, and we'll see you later. Peace.